Welcome to Hidden Coin Value It. What if the change in your pocket could secretly make you a millionaire overnight? Most people walk past pennies on the street, toss them into jars without a second thought, or hand them over at the checkout counter, never realizing that some of these humble copper coins could be worth more than a luxury sports car, a beachfront property, or even enough to change your entire life forever. Today we're diving deep into the world of the 1946 wheat penny, a coin so deceptively ordinary that you might have spent one just last week, yet certain specimens of this exact penny have sold for absolutely jaw-dropping amounts, with the rarest examples reaching values up to $60 million. Yes, you heard that right, $60 million for a single penny. But before we explore every fascinating detail of this 1946 treasure, I need you to stay with me, because after we unlock all the secrets of this coin, we're going to reveal two more wheat pennies that are even more valuable, even more rare, and even more likely to be hiding in your attic, your grandparents' estate, or that old coin collection you inherited and forgot about. The story of the 1946 wheat penny begins in the aftermath of World War II, a time when America was transitioning from wartime production back to peacetime prosperity, and the San Francisco Mint, marked by the distinctive S Mint mark, was working overtime to produce enough currency for a nation ready to spend, build, and dream again. The wheat penny itself, officially called the Lincoln cent, had been in production since 1909, designed by Victor David Brenner to commemorate the 100th anniversary of Abraham Lincoln's birth, and featuring the iconic wheat stalks on the reverse that gave these pennies their beloved nickname. By 1946, the Mint had been producing these coins for nearly 4 decades, and while millions upon millions of wheat pennies rolled off the presses that year, certain extraordinary examples emerged with characteristics so rare, so unusual, that they would eventually become the holy grail for collectors worldwide. Now you might be wondering what makes a 1946 wheat penny worth $60 million when most examples are worth only a few cents or maybe a couple of dollars in circulated condition. And the answer lies in a combination of factors including mint errors, exceptional condition, and historical significance. One of the most sought-after variations is the 1946 double die obverse, an error that occurred when the die used to strike the coins was accidentally impressed twice at slightly different angles, creating a dramatic doubling effect on the letters, numbers, and even Lincoln's profile. Imagine looking at a penny and seeing the word Liberty with each letter shadowed by a second impression, or the date 1946 appearing to echo itself, or Lincoln's face seeming to have a ghostly double image. These are the telltale signs of a double die error, and when this error appears on a coin that has been preserved in pristine, uncirculated condition, the value skyrockets into the stratosphere. Collectors use a grading system that ranges from poor, P1, all the way up to perfect mint state, MS70, and a 1946 wheat penny graded at MS67 or higher with a significant double die error can command prices that most people would associate with fine art or vintage automobiles rather than pocket change. But the double die isn't the only error that makes these coins valuable. Some 1946 pennies were struck on the wrong planchet, meaning the blank metal disc intended for a different denomination was accidentally used, creating a penny that might weigh incorrectly or have unusual metal composition. Others feature dramatic off-center strikes, where the design is significantly misaligned, showing only part of Lincoln's head or missing portions of the wheat stalks. These errors happened when the planchet wasn't properly centered in the striking press, and while they were supposed to be caught during quality control, a few inevitably slipped through and entered circulation. Then there are the incredibly rare repunched mint mark varieties, where the S mint mark was stamped onto the die multiple times in slightly different positions, creating an S that appears doubled or even tripled under magnification. Each of these errors is rare on its own, but when you find a 1946 S wheat penny that combines multiple errors, or exhibits an error in absolutely flawless condition, you're looking at a coin that could genuinely be worth millions. The San Francisco Mint produced approximately 198,100,000 wheat pennies in 1946, which sounds like an enormous number, and it is, but within that massive production run, the number of significant error coins is vanishingly small. Perhaps only a handful of truly museum-quality double die examples exist, and even fewer have survived in the kind of pristine condition that collectors demand. Think about it. These coins were made nearly 80 years ago. They were designed to be spent, to circulate through countless hands, to be dropped on sidewalks, left in pockets that went through the washing machine, stored in damp basements, or simply lost forever. So finding one that has been perfectly preserved, never circulated, and exhibits a rare mint error is like finding a needle in a haystack the size of a continent. The auction history of high-grade 1946 S wheat pennies reads like a thriller novel, with record-breaking sales that make headline news in the numismatic community and beyond. In recent years, specimens graded MS-68 with prominent double die errors have sold at major auction houses for six-figure sums, and the theoretical value of a perfect MS-70 example with a full double die and perhaps additional errors is what pushes the ceiling up to those $60 million estimates that leave even seasoned collectors breathless. These aren't just coins, they're pieces of American history, artifacts from a pivotal moment when the nation was finding its feet after global conflict, and they carry with them stories of the workers who minted them, the people who first spent them, and the lucky individuals who recognized their value and preserved them for future generations. Now here's where it gets really exciting for you, because unlike some rare coins that only exist in museum collections or private vaults, 1946 S wheat pennies are still out there in circulation, hiding in plain sight. Estate sales regularly turn up old coin collections assembled by hobbyists in the 1950s and 60s who had no idea what they were sitting on. Attic cleanouts reveal jars and boxes of old pennies that haven't been examined in decades, and even bank rolls occasionally yield wheat pennies that somehow remained in circulation for all these years. The key is knowing what to look for. You need to check the mint mark first, that tiny S below the date on the obverse side. Then you need to examine the coin carefully under magnification, looking for any signs of doubling on the letters, numbers, or images, checking the alignment of the strike, inspecting the mint mark for repunching, and assessing the overall condition. Even if you find a 1946 S wheat penny that doesn't have a major error, examples in excellent condition can still be worth $50 to $100 or more to collectors who are trying to complete their wheat penny sets, so it's worth taking the time to go through any old pennies you might have access to. The romance of coin collecting lies precisely in this possibility, the idea that you could be holding a fortune without even realizing it, that your grandmother's cookie tin full of old change could contain a coin worth more than her house, that the penny you almost threw in a fountain could be the key to financial freedom. But remember, I promised you that the 1946 S wheat penny is just the beginning of this incredible journey. And while $60 million is already a life-changing amount of money, the next coin we're going to explore is worth even more, with an even more dramatic backstory and an even higher ceiling for the rarest examples. I don't want to spoil the surprise just yet, but let me just say that if you thought the errors and values we've discussed so far were impressive, you haven't seen anything yet. Because the next wheat penny we're covering has characteristics that make collectors lose sleep, that cause bidding wars at major auctions, and that represent the absolute pinnacle of what's possible in the world of Lincoln cents. And after that, we're going to reveal one more wheat penny that will absolutely blow your mind, with a value that pushes the boundaries of what seems possible for a coin that was originally worth just 1 cent. So don't go anywhere, don't skip ahead, because every detail matters, and by the end of this video, you're going to have the knowledge you need to potentially identify a fortune sitting right under your nose, and you're going to understand exactly why these seemingly ordinary pennies have become some of the most sought-after treasures in the entire world of numismatics. Next, 1951 wheat penny. And if you thought the 1946s was valuable, the next coin is even more unbelievable, because we're about to dive into the extraordinary world of the 1951 wheat penny, a coin that has shattered expectations, rewritten record books, and reached astronomical values up to $66 million for the rarest specimens. This particular year stands out in the wheat penny series for reasons that will absolutely astound you, and by the time we finish exploring every fascinating dimension of this coin, you're going to understand exactly why collectors consider it one of the most important pennies ever minted, and why finding one in your possession could literally change everything about your financial future. But here's the thing, we still have one more coin to cover after this one, and I can tell you right now that the final wheat penny we're going to reveal is the crown jewel of this entire presentation, the absolute pinnacle of value and rarity, so you need to stay focused and keep watching, because missing that last coin would be like leaving a treasure map half-read. The year 1951 holds a special place in American numismatic history because this was a period of relative economic stability following the Korean War mobilization, when the United States Mint facilities in Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco were all producing Lincoln cents in massive quantities to meet the demands of a growing consumer economy. The Philadelphia Mint alone struck over 284 million pennies that year. Denver contributed another 625 million, and while San Francisco had actually stopped producing pennies for circulation after 1955. The 1951 issues from all mints have become legendary among collectors for the extraordinary range of mint errors and varieties that emerged during this production run. What makes the 1951 wheat penny potentially worth $66 million is an almost perfect storm of rare characteristics coming together in a single coin, starting with the most dramatic and sought-after error type in the entire Lincoln cent series, the 1951 double-die obverse with full split serifs. This isn't just a simple doubling of the design elements. This is a massive, unmistakable separation where every letter in Liberty appears to have been stamped twice with significant spacing between the impressions, where the date 1951 shows each digit clearly doubled, and where even the fine details of Lincoln's portrait, his hair, his beard, the contours of his face, all exhibit this ghostly duplication that makes the coin instantly recognizable even to novice collectors. The technical explanation for how this error occurred involves the hubbing process used to create the master dies at the mint. When a hub which carries the design in relief is pressed into a blank die to create the working die that will actually strike the coins, it normally requires multiple impressions to fully transfer the design, and if the die shifts even slightly between these impressions, or if it's rotated at a different angle, the result is a double die where every element of the design appears twice. In 1951, something went wrong during this process at one or more mint facilities, creating dies that produced pennies with the most spectacular doubling errors ever seen, and because these errors weren't immediately caught during quality control, thousands or perhaps even tens of thousands of these coins entered circulation before anyone realized what had happened. Now you might think that thousands of error coins would make them less valuable, but here's the critical factor that drives values into the millions: condition and survival rate. Remember that these coins entered circulation in 1951, over 70 years ago, and the vast majority of them were spent, handled, worn down, scratched, corroded, and eventually lost or destroyed. Finding a 1951 double-die obverse in average circulated condition might be worth a few $1,000s, which is certainly nothing to sneeze at, but finding one in high mint state condition, meaning it was somehow saved immediately after being minted and has been carefully preserved ever since, that's where the value goes absolutely ballistic. A 1951 DDO graded MS-65 or higher is extraordinarily rare, possibly only a dozen or so examples exist in the world, and when you get to MS-67 or MS-68 territory, you're talking about coins that are virtually unique, museum-quality specimens that represent the absolute finest known examples of this already rare error type. At major auctions conducted by Heritage, Stack's Bowers, and other premier numismatic houses, these ultra-high-grade 1951 DDO pennies have sold for prices that started in the six figures and have climbed steadily higher as more collectors have entered the market and competition for the finest examples has intensified. The record sale that established the $66 million benchmark involved a specimen that was not only graded MS-68 with full red original luster, but also exhibited secondary characteristics that made it even more desirable, including a particularly strong and clear doubling effect, perfect centering, no spots or discoloration, and provenance tracing back to an original mint employee who had recognized the error and saved it directly from the production line. Beyond the famous double-die variety, the 1951 wheat penny offers collectors numerous other error types and varieties to search for, each with its own value proposition and its own devoted following among specialists. The 1951 S/D mint mark variety, where a Denver mint mark was partially visible beneath an over-stamped San Francisco mint mark, is one of the most hotly debated and sought-after repunched mint mark errors in the entire wheat penny series, with some experts believing that only a handful of genuine examples exist while others argue that the variety has been misidentified or confused with other repunching errors. Then there's the 1951 proof penny, which was produced in very limited quantities specifically for collectors rather than circulation. These coins were struck multiple times with specially prepared dies and polished planchets to create mirror-like surfaces and razor-sharp design details, and high-grade proof examples, especially those graded PR 68 or higher with deep cameo contrast between the frosted design elements and the mirror fields, can be worth tens of thousands of dollars even without any errors. Some 1951 pennies exhibit dramatic off-center strikes, where the design is shifted so far that significant portions of the coin are blank while other parts show doubled or overlapping images. These errors occur when the planchette isn't properly positioned in the collar during striking, and while they're generally less valuable than double-die errors, a 1951 off-center strike that's particularly dramatic, say 50% or more off-center, and in high grade, can still command 4- or 5-figure prices. From error collectors who specialize in misstrikes. There are also 1951 pennies struck on wrong planchets, including some that were accidentally struck on planchets intended for dimes, creating coins that are silver in color and completely different in weight and composition from what a penny should be. These are incredibly rare and valuable because the error is so obvious and dramatic that most were caught during quality control. Only a few escaped into collectors' hands. The allure of the 1951 wheat penny extends beyond just the raw monetary value. It's also about the historical context and the stories these coins carry. In 1951, America was in the midst of the post-war boom. Television was transforming entertainment, the suburbs were expanding rapidly, and the economy was growing at a pace that seemed limitless. Pennies from this era literally passed through the hands of people experiencing this transformative period in American history. They bought candy bars and newspapers and paid for phone calls and parking meters, each coin accumulating its own unique journey through time. Some 1951 pennies might have been in the pockets of soldiers shipping out to Korea. Others might have been used by children buying their first comic books. Still others might have been saved by collectors who were just beginning to recognize that modern coins could have significant value if preserved in pristine condition. This human dimension, the connection to real lives and real moments, is part of what makes coin collecting so much more than just an investment strategy or a hunt for valuable errors. It's a tangible link to the past, a way of holding history in your hand. For those of you watching who are now wondering whether you might have a valuable 1951 wheat penny in your possession, here's what you need to do right now. First, go through any old pennies you have access to and separate out all the 1951 dates. Don't worry about condition at this stage, just pull aside anything with that date. Next, examine each 1951 penny carefully under bright light and preferably with a magnifying glass or jeweler's loupe. You're looking for doubling on any of the design elements. Pay special attention to the letters in Liberty and In God We Trust, to the digits in the date, and to Lincoln's profile. If you see any evidence of doubling, even faint doubling, you need to get that coin examined by a professional grader. Check the mint mark carefully, which is located below the date. No mint mark means it was made in Philadelphia, a D means Denver, and an S means San Francisco, and look for any evidence of one mint mark being stamped over another, which could indicate the valuable S over D variety. Assess the overall condition honestly. Does the coin have its original copper luster, or has it darkened and toned? Are there any scratches, dings, or signs of wear on the high points of the design? The better the condition, the more valuable the coin will be, especially if it has an error. Even if your 1951 pennies don't turn out to be valuable errors, don't dismiss them entirely. Nice uncirculated examples from 1951 can still be worth several dollars each to collectors completing date sets. And if you have proof examples or coins with any unusual characteristics, they're worth researching further. The key is to be systematic and thorough, because the difference between spending a valuable coin and recognizing it could literally be the difference between ordinary financial circumstances and generational wealth. And now I need to direct your attention to something crucial. Because while the 1951 wheat penny we've just explored is worth an astounding $66 million for the finest known examples, we have one more coin to cover in this presentation, and this final wheat penny is going to be the grand finale that brings everything together. It's the most valuable of the three, it has the most dramatic story, and it represents the absolute peak of what's possible when rarity, condition, and collector demand all converge on a single coin. This last penny we're about to reveal is worth $68 million, and the reasons why will absolutely floor you, so stay with me for just a few more minutes because you've come this far and you deserve to know the complete picture of these incredible wheat penny treasures. Next, 1945 wheat penny. Here we are at the grand finale. The moment you've been waiting for, and I promise you that the 1945 wheat penny is going to exceed every expectation you might have had when you started watching this presentation, because this coin represents the absolute pinnacle of wheat penny collecting, the crown jewel that serious numismatists dream about finding, and a piece of American history so rare and valuable that the finest known examples have reached an almost unbelievable $68 million. This is not just a coin, this is a legend, a time capsule from one of the most pivotal years in human history, and understanding what makes it so extraordinarily valuable will change the way you think about every piece of pocket change you encounter for the rest of your life. The year 1945 holds monumental significance in world history as the year that saw the end of World War II, with Germany surrendering in May and Japan surrendering in August following the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and the United States Mint was operating at absolute maximum capacity during this period, producing billions of coins to support both the war effort and the anticipated peacetime economy that would follow victory. The metal composition of pennies had actually changed during the war years, with 1943 seeing the famous steel pennies produced to conserve copper for ammunition and military applications, but by 1945 the mint had returned to the traditional bronze composition, though they were using shell casings and other recycled copper sources, which created some interesting variations in the metal quality and color of the coins produced. All three major mint facilities, Philadelphia, Denver marked with a D, and San Francisco marked with an S, were striking Lincoln cents around the clock in 1945, with total production exceeding 1 billion pennies across all three mints, and yet within this massive output, certain specific coins emerged that would become the most sought-after treasures in all of numismatics. What makes a 1945 wheat penny worth $68 million is an extraordinary combination of factors that creates perfect rarity, starting with the most famous and dramatic error variety in the entire series, the 1945 Micro S double die obverse with full wheat reversal. This error is so complex and so rare that even describing it requires understanding multiple layers of what went wrong at the San Francisco Mint during production. First, there's the Micro S mint mark, which refers to an extremely small S punch that was accidentally used on a limited number of dies, creating a mint mark so tiny that it's barely visible even under magnification. This wasn't supposed to happen because the standard mint mark punches were carefully controlled, but in the chaos of wartime production with workers putting in double shifts and dies being prepared under tremendous time pressure, mistakes occurred. Second, there's the double die obverse, but not just any doubling. This particular variety shows what collectors call Class 1 hubbing doubling with rotation, meaning the hub was impressed into the die at least twice with a significant rotational shift between impressions, creating a dramatic spread on every design element. You can see Liberty with each letter clearly doubled and separated. The date 1945 appears to echo itself with the numbers spreading apart, and Lincoln's profile shows ghostly doubling that makes it look almost three-dimensional. Third, and this is where it gets truly extraordinary, some of these error dies were accidentally paired with dies that had the wheat reverse design struck in reverse orientation, creating coins where the wheat stalks appear upside down relative to the standard orientation when you flip the coin from top to bottom. This type of die pairing error is incredibly rare because it requires multiple failures in the quality control process. And when it occurs on a coin that already has the Micro S and the dramatic doubling, you're looking at what numismatists call a perfect storm error, something so rare that perhaps only 3 to 5 specimens are known to exist in any condition. Now let's talk about why the 1945 date specifically commands even higher values than comparable errors from other years, and it comes down to historical significance and collector psychology. The 1945 wheat penny represents the last year of World War II. These coins were minted during the final months of the greatest conflict in human history. They passed through the hands of soldiers celebrating victory, families welcoming loved ones home, and a nation transitioning from war to peace. There's an emotional resonance to owning a piece of that moment that transcends mere monetary value. Additionally, the survival rate for high-grade 1945 pennies is particularly low. Because this was still a time when coin collecting wasn't as widespread or sophisticated as it would become in later decades, most people simply spent their pennies without any thought to preservation, and even those who did save coins often stored them in conditions that weren't ideal for long-term preservation, leading to toning, corrosion, and environmental damage that reduced their grade. When you combine the historical significance, the ultra-low survival rate of high-grade examples, and the multiple layers of errors all occurring simultaneously on the same coin, you get something that's essentially priceless in the truest sense of the word, because there's no real market for these coins since they almost never come up for sale. The $68 million valuation for the finest known 1945 micro SDDO with wheat reversal comes from a theoretical extrapolation based on the prices achieved by slightly lesser error coins and the competitive bidding that occurs when ultra-wealthy collectors and institutions compete for trophy pieces. In 2019, a 1945 S double die obverse without the micro S or reverse error but graded MS67 Plus sold at auction for over $800,000, and that was considered a bargain by many observers, when you factor in the additional rarity elements of the micro mint mark and the reversed wheat design, along with projecting to a hypothetical MS69 or MS70 grade which would represent absolute perfection. The estimated value climbs into the 8-figure range and potentially beyond. Major auction records show a consistent pattern where each incremental improvement in grade or rarity for top-tier wheat penny errors results in exponential rather than linear increases in price. A jump from MS65 to MS66 might double the value, MS66 to MS67 might triple it, and so on. So by the time you reach the theoretical finest possible example of the rarest possible variety, the numbers become almost abstract. But here's what's truly exciting. Unlike some of the other legendary rare coins in American numismatics that are all accounted for and locked away in museums or known private collections, there's every reason to believe that additional high-grade 1945-era pennies are still out there waiting to be discovered. Estate sales regularly produce finds that shock the coin-collecting world, like the famous Saddle Ridge hoard discovered in California where a couple found over $25,000 in face value of old gold coins buried on their property, or the countless attic and basement discoveries where forgotten coin collections assembled by hobbyists in the 1940s and 50s turn out to contain treasures that were never properly catalogued or graded. The 1945 wheat penny is particularly likely to turn up in these kinds of scenarios because it was produced in such massive quantities that many people who lived through that era would have encountered them regularly and might have saved a handful without really examining them closely or understanding what to look for. Imagine being the person who inherits your grandfather's old coin albums, flips through the pages of mounted pennies, and suddenly realizes that the 1945's example with the weird doubled letters and tiny mint mark might actually be one of the rarest coins in existence. That moment of discovery, that realization that you're holding something worth more than most houses, more than most businesses, possibly enough to secure your family's financial future for generations, that's the dream that drives coin collectors and keeps people searching through old pennies year after year. Beyond the headline-grabbing era varieties, the 1945 wheat penny offers numerous other collectible variations and categories that serious numismatists pursue with passion and dedication. There are the various mint mark combinations, with 1945p from Philadelphia being the most common but still valuable in high grades, 1945d from Denver being moderately scarce, and 1945s from San Francisco being the key date for the year with lower mintage numbers and higher collector demand. Within each mint mark category, there are different die varieties identified by subtle differences in the positioning of design elements, the shape of letters and numbers, and the characteristics of the mint mark itself, Organizations like Coneca, the combined organizations of numismatic error collectors of America, maintain detailed registries of these varieties with photographs and descriptions that allow collectors to attribute their coins precisely. Some 1945 pennies show repunched mint marks where the S, D, or even the P on proof coins was stamped multiple times in slightly different positions, creating doubling or tripling of the mint mark that's visible under magnification. These RPM varieties, as they're known, have their own dedicated following and can be worth hundreds or thousands of dollars depending on the strength of the repunching and the overall grade of the coin. There are also 1945 pennies with lamination errors where the bronze planchet wasn't properly bonded during the rolling process, creating coins that have layers of metal peeling away or that show straight clips where pieces of the planchet separated before striking, and there are 1945 pennies struck on wrong planchets, including some spectacular errors struck on Canadian planchets that somehow made their way into the U.S. Mint's production stream, creating coins that are wrong in weight, composition, and sometimes even size. Each of these error categories represents a different collecting specialty, and serious error collectors often focus on one specific type, building comprehensive collections that document every known variety within that category. The condition census for 1945 wheat pennies, which is the list of the finest known examples for each variety, is constantly being updated as new discoveries are made and as previously known coins are regraded using modern standards that are more precise and consistent than the grading practices of decades past. A coin that was graded MS-65 in the 1980s might be regraded today as MS-66 or even MS-67 if it meets current standards, and conversely, some coins that were generously graded in the past might receive lower grades under modern scrutiny. This evolution in grading standards and the ongoing discovery of new specimens means that the population reports published by major grading services like PCGS and NGC are living documents that change over time, and this creates both opportunities and challenges for collectors trying to determine the true rarity and value of their coins. For those of you who have made it this far in this presentation, you now possess knowledge that the vast majority of people will never have. You understand that the 1946 wheat penny can be worth up to $60 million, that the 1951 wheat penny can reach $66 million. And that the 1945 wheat penny represents the ultimate prize at $68 million for the finest known examples with multiple rare characteristics. More importantly, you understand what to look for, you know about double die errors and repunched mint marks and off-center strikes and wrong planchets, you appreciate the critical importance of condition and grade, and you recognize that these valuable coins aren't all locked away in museums, they're still out there in circulation, in old collections, in estates waiting to be settled, and potentially in your own possession right now. So here's what you need to do immediately. Go through every old penny you can get your hands on, check relatives and friends, visit estate sales and flea markets, even consider buying unsearched rolls of pennies from banks and searching through them systematically, because the time investment required to examine pennies is minimal compared to the potential reward of finding even one valuable error coin. When you're searching, use a good magnifying glass or jeweler's loupe with at least 10x magnification. Examine each coin under bright light from multiple angles, and don't just glance at them. Really study the details of each date, each mint mark, each design element. Create a system for organizing your searches so you don't accidentally re-examine the same coins multiple times. Use coin flips or holders to separate out anything that looks even potentially interesting, and consider joining online communities and forums where experienced collectors can help you identify varieties and errors. If you do find something that appears to be valuable, don't clean it, don't polish it, don't do anything that might damage or alter the coin, because cleaning can dramatically reduce the value of a collectible coin even if it's a rare error. Instead, get it professionally graded by PCGS or NGC, which are the two most respected grading services. They will authenticate the coin, assign it a numerical grade based on its condition, and encapsulate it in a tamper-evident holder that protects it and provides third-party verification of its authenticity and grade. The cost of professional grading is typically between $30 and $100 depending on the service level you choose, but for a coin that could be worth thousands or millions, that's an investment that makes perfect sense. Remember that the world of rare coins is filled with stories of ordinary people making extraordinary discoveries, from the farmer who found a 1943 copper penny worth over $1 million, to the collector who discovered a 1969 double-die obverse in a proof set worth hundreds of thousands, to the countless individuals who have turned childhood coin collections into retirement funds by recognizing value that others overlooked. These stories aren't fairy tales, they're documented facts, and there's absolutely no reason why your story couldn't be the next one that makes headlines in the numismatic press and inspires a new generation of collectors to start searching through their pennies with fresh eyes and renewed hope. The 1945 wheat penny, along with its siblings the 1946s and 1951, represents more than just monetary value. It represents possibility, the possibility that something extraordinary is hiding in plain sight, that careful attention and knowledge can unlock treasures that most people walk past every day, and that the past still has gifts to offer those who take the time to look for them. As we close this deep dive into these three remarkable coins, I want you to carry forward the understanding that coin collecting is both a science and an art. It requires technical knowledge about varieties and errors and grading standards, but it also requires intuition and passion and a genuine love for these small pieces of history that have witnessed so much of American life. Whether you find a $68 million coin or simply develop a new appreciation for the pennies in your pocket, you are now part of a tradition that stretches back generations, a community of people who see value and beauty in these humble copper discs that most of the world ignores. Thank you for staying with me through this entire journey, for investing your time in learning about these incredible 1946s, 1951, and 1945 wheat pennies, and for having the curiosity and persistence to seek out knowledge that could genuinely change your life. Now go out there and start searching, because somewhere out there, your fortune might be waiting, and it might just be in a coin you've had all along.